like that topic that threw out?
No, we didn't see it. I only saw going over questions.
Well, I think you got plenty to say.
I wasn't paying attention.
All right, you guys want to do this?
Yep,
Sure.
we
Okay.
are ready.
All right. We're back for another combat-based podcast in the garage. Let's get this rolling. We're going to keep it high and tight, as always. Tobin, the producer, here. I'm here. We got the CEO, the femme fatale, Melissa Haueter.
Hello. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Fans and haters alike.
Yes. Hi.
Hi.
We've got the purveyor of sage wisdom.
Ooh,
I wouldn't
Chris
go that
Haueter.
far, Tobin.
yeah.
It's a little too far.
A little too far.
That's what
Rein it back in, Tobin.
we could tie that in with our cult episode.
There you go.
Ugh.
All right. So we got a couple things we need to just like talk about.
Okay.
Richard Norton passed away.
Oh,
Yes.
I know. Super sad.
Absolutely
sweet.
tragic. I found out the first day I was in Australia, and like we were gonna exchange some texts, and possibly even if he came into Sydney while I was there, see me and Sid at the seminar I had at Chris Burns's place, and yeah, what an absolute tragedy! What a loss.
Yeah, so sudden too, right? I feel like he was just here
Mm-hmm.
and we were talking and he seemed so healthy and we were talking about how crazy healthy he seemed
Yeah,
and how well he seemed. And
yeah,
How well he took care of himself, and
especially compared to me.
yep, and
Yeah.
young and vibrant he looked.
yeah. And the heartbreaking thing from my perspective as kind of an outsider, I don't know him well, at all, other than that one time we met. But sitting there in the room and watching his wife watch him do this show, and she was looked so in love with him.
Yes.
Yeah, they
And,
seem very close.
Yeah,
Yes.
they seem so close, and it's just
Yes.
sad to believe that she's going through that
Yep.
right now.
Yeah.
Absolutely crushing.
Yeah.
And it's also one of those things like I've fringe known him for 20, 30 years, but I like until that podcast, I never really knew him.
But you were his fan
Yeah.
growing up.
Yeah. Like I knew him like more than I knew Chuck Norris, who I'd met like twice, but like I just didn't I had no idea who he was, what like the real Richard Norton was.
Yeah.
And in the pre-podcast show, I felt like, wow, what a super cool guy that I would have probably, had you asked me before, thought he was far different, like more jockish, but he was absolutely not. He's an artist. Yeah.
Isn't that classic martial arts?
Yeah.
What you see and then what you get.
Yes.
But
feel like that's
also
kinda-
what you saw at 70, how old was he? 74, 75?
75.
75,
Yeah.
probably very different than he
Yes.
was at 45. or
That's true.
35
We
or
do all
25.
change. Yes.
Especially men.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess women change too, but men are they're more jockish and tough guy
Yeah.
when they're younger. And
Yeah.
then something happens in the 50s and 60s, and by the 70s, you're fully in it,
Yeah.
where you gain so much humility. I mean, women do too. I just think that it's to a lesser degree because it's not such a dramatic
Yep.
loss of physical strength.
I actually heard a really interesting lecture, one of my history lectures, but the guy's like really into anthropology and biology as well. And part of it was about how men at 60, that their hormones change and they lose that fight drive and that compete with other men drive, and that like evolution wise that's healthy to like at 50ish, because if the old men were still competing with the young men, it would be much more violent, more offspring would die off, therefore that gene was carried, because it's when the older people care for the younger people gene. It was just an interesting little dovetail in this guy's lecture.
I wonder if evolutionarily there's something unique going on, because people haven't for many, many years, people didn't live as long as they
Right.
did. So people are carrying the sage wisdom for
Yes.
longer.
Yeah. Yeah, like up until like as little as 100 years ago, people didn't live much past the age of 50.
Yeah.
60 was getting pretty old.
Yeah.
There has been in history, even going back 1,000 years, people that lived into their 70s, and the rare occasion, especially in like Okinawa, Japan, in their 90s and hundreds. And a lot of that is lifestyle and just being lucky to not get tuberculosis or
Modern
plague.
medicine. Modern medicine, really.
But TB is back, coming back again, as is smallpox and polio.
Yeah.
They're on the march again.
Oh, good news.
Yeah, I almost wonder if that's because people are like anti-vax now, and then they like.
Most experts say it is, but most people don't trust experts anymore. So
Hey.
a lot of things are going to come back.
Yeah. So it kind of seems like if you're 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, historically you should feel like you're living on borrowed time.
It sure seems like it to me.
You're doing good. Yeah. My mom had non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
So did my
she
dad.
was like 30, 32, and they said she had a couple months to live. And my sister was just born, my
Oh
older
my
sister.
gosh.
So she went through like intense chemo. This is before they really knew much about that
Yeah.
disease, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and they basically were like, yeah, you're going to die in a couple months. And my dad was at home with a new baby, and my mom was going through chemo and stuff. Obviously, she ended up surviving. She had another
Wow.
baby, which was me.
Oh,
right?
wow.
Yeah,
And
that's amazing.
And
That is.
So my whole life was always like, I'm living on borrowed time.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it's just our household has always had that.
You beat the odds.
That
Yeah,
like energy
Chris's
to
dad
it.
didn't make it.
My
through.
dad did not
Yeah.
make it. And I would say, like, even though people often dismiss it because they think it's a voluntary disease, I would say recovering from opiate addiction, like I'm on borrowed time. Like there's so many times where I coulda, shoulda, woulda, OD'd and died, and I didn't.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think that's a good thing to remind yourself to approach life as a gift, not a right. Like, I have a right to live. It's like, no, I'm lucky to be alive.
Yeah, I would concur with that. What else did we have to talk about? There's something else. We took a couple weeks off. I went to Portland. I was thinking about going to see Matt, but I just needed a little jiu-jitsu break.
A jiu-jitsu break, yeah.
But yeah, we got a couple weeks off the pod and we're back again.
Mm-hmm.
So it's all good. So today we're going to talk about something that has just popped up in the jiu-jitsu zeitgeist, the sexualization of jiu-jitsu. Okay, so the brand Hyperfly, which is a cool
I know the
gi
brand,
and clothing brand, they announced that they were going to do a collaboration with Playboy, and they were going to have this sexy women's jiu-jitsu campaign that included a Playboy Bunnies Fight Club, and they were going to do all this stuff, and they like saw a massive backlash from the community.
Well, we are in an interesting phase where it seems like half of the population pays attention to what I'm going to call the culture wars. And out of that half, a quarter of them are trying to move what they consider to be forward progress, and the other half is trying to go back to another glorious time. And for anyone out there who was a big fan of Mad Men, that show, which came out the tail end of the Obama era, here I am, this aging white guy watching this show. And even though it was made and written by mostly progressive liberals, it really did nostalgize and romanticize a past where, especially if you're a white guy, it seemed like life was better then. But like the world was your oyster, and you could make yourself anything you wanted to be and all that. And I think we're in an era where people are longing for that past.
They probably just want to drink and smoke at work all day.
That's part of it.
And,
And make jokes.
grab on women's
Yes.
stuff.
Private areas,
Yeah.
personal space,
Yes.
Yeah.
without getting in trouble.
Yeah. And there are a lot of people out there saying, what was wrong with that?
Yeah.
What
It
a
was
better time
wonderful.
it was, right?
Perverting
I'm
around.
just the wrong gender.
Yeah. But
And
yeah,
I wouldn't have had a choice back then either.
Yeah.
Been stuck
I've always
in a
found
dress.
that, and I have heard arguments, because I'm so open-minded, it's absurd at times. I've heard arguments of females in porn give an argument how female empowerment in porn is good. Like, my brain instantly thinks, how could that possibly be empowering? That's just where
Because that's what they want to do.
my
And so-
conservative head goes.
Is that what they think, though? Like, they want to do that, and
Yep.
men can do it, so why can't they
So
do
why
it?
can't women do it?
Men
Yeah.
can be super sexual without having a bad, reputation or whatever. Why can't they do it too?
Yes.
But it's just extreme, right? And it's, I
Well-
don't think it's, personally, it's not, I'm not a fan of it for men or women.
Yeah, I mean, you always point out the difference between, what is it, porn and
Erotica.
Erotica and porn.
where the
Yes.
porn has a victim,
There's a victim in porn.
and I feel like Playboy is soft.
It's erotica, but it's a little soft porn too. Yeah, it is.
Because I feel like the view is like taking the woman and making them, it's objectifying.
It is objectifying, yes.
So,
I don't know anything about Playboy.
never seen one? I've only read the
really.
articles.
Yeah.
Oh, is that what you do? You read the article?
That was the classic
Only read the
line.
articles.
Okay, Tobin.
The classic line growing up when people didn't want to admit they got Playboy for jacking off was, "Oh, I read the articles."
Yeah.
And there was the original three were Playboy, Penthouse, and Hustler. And in that order, where Playboy was the least explicit,
Yeah.
Penthouse was a lot more, and Hustler was the most explicit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I would look at Playboy and I'd read the articles, and then I'd get to the naked photos and I'd just go, ew, and I'd cover my eyes, and then I'd flip the page and read the
that's
next
sweet.
article only.
That's really
But
sweet.
Playboy's goal was to have what they called the girl next door, the innocent girl. Penthouse was the voluptuous woman, and Hustler was the ready to go. Yeah, it
Let's
was
do
like a whole other world.
Well, how creepy is that? The girl next door.
I know.
So someone's trying to
that
live
seems almost creepier than
safely
Hustler. Yeah,
in their home,
right.
and the fantasy is that you're creeping on them from next door. So now you're
Right.
getting dressed, doing your normal stuff in your safe home, but the vibe is the cool
But
thing
isn't
is that
that
there's some
what
creep.
we have to deal with? Isn't that life for a woman? I don't know. Maybe you guys don't know anything about that.
No,
That's what
I
I have to contribute. I mean, I
yeah.
really do think, I feel it less now than ever. I feel less that men are checking me out or whatever. But when I was young, it felt like everywhere you went, if you wore an outfit that showed your legs or your midriff or whatever, that you were going to get attention.
Yes.
And that it's better, like, if you don't want attention, cover yourself up. Maybe you do want attention, then let it all hang out. Maybe I don't get attention because I'm old and I don't show a lot of skin and I get cold easily.
Well, my question is, like you were saying, Chris, how can we view this sexualization thing? Let's take a woman and objectify her, look at her as this sexy hunk of meat, and how can that be empowering for a woman?
I don't think it is.
I understand that, like, in the sense of, like, now the woman has leveraged her sexy body and her sex appeal to gain control over men. But I feel like that's not holistically good for women. So I don't understand why people always make this argument that, like, oh, I'm being empowered by learning how to pole dance. I'm being empowered by
I think
being a
that's
Playboy
different.
Jiu-Jitsu bunny. I don't get it.
I
What's the
think
deal?
that being able to wear whatever we want is empowering. If somebody tells me I have to wear, a dress every day, like dress up like Mad Men every day with heels to go to work or to go wherever I'm going, to clean the house, that's not empowering, right? So the opposite is I get to choose my clothes. But to me, it's more empowering if men aren't thinking that that means like because I dress a certain way that it's sexualized. Because I would think like I like to look at women that have nice figures, and that is attractive to me to see a nice body, but
Yeah.
I'm not thinking, oh, I'd like to like do some sexual thing
Get
with
a
her.
ride
I'm just
on that.
admiring her.
Yeah.
So I don't know if men have the ability to just admire a woman's body without sexualizing it, or if it's like a spectrum. Some
It's a
men
spectrum.
can, some men cannot, and
Others
there's everything
can at
in
times
between.
and can't at other times.
Right.
Yeah,
So
it's a
like,
spectrum.
like if we all go to the beach, and I know everybody's wearing bathing suits, can we admire somebody that has a nice body
Yeah.
and not feel like we got to go hit on them or whatever it is?
Well,
You know?
I noticed, like, this is true. Like, all right, so when I was growing up, there was a line that I always thought was mean, and I was the youngest. I had 2 older sisters. My mom was pretty feminist and all that, but is like there was a saying on the beach that would say, "No fat chicks," and to me it always seemed mean.
It is mean.
And
Super mean.
and girls all wanted to be Twiggy model thin.
Yeah.
And I always liked big butts. And I felt weird because I did. And it took the black community to make that okay for white guys. It was weird because, like, to me, it was stigma. It was like, I had no interest in skinny girls. And I felt weird because that's what supposedly we are supposed to like. So,
well, I admire women who have
fit.
muscular,
Yes.
athletic looking builds with nice muscle tone that look like
Yes.
they work out. So if I see someone who looks out, I'm going to be like, oh, like that's what I want to look
Yes.
You know
You
what?
know?
I had a good buddy from growing up, and he ended up marrying a woman who was an Olympic water polo player.
like.
She went to the Olympics twice.
Right.
She medaled bronze and gold.
So had lats and legs because you got
I love
tread
lats
water.
and legs.
She was jacked. And Sports Illustrated did the swimsuit edition on their polo team.
Oh.
So she has like a full thing in
yeah.
there. I thought that was a good deal. Like I could look at that and go like, oh my, it was my friend's wife, you know,
Yeah.
and go like,
Right.
oh wow, like this is a beautiful display of the human body that was not, it didn't have a sex connotation for me. So
Well, if
I
you
could see it right there.
go back pre-1980, even the male action star was not ripped. That was a post-80s phenomenon, a shift in a culture, which went to men first. The Arnold Schwarzenegger, Sylvester Stallone, like we changed who our action heroes looked. When you look at the 1950s Superman, he's not all buffed.
Yeah.
And part of that, I think, changed with not only modern working out, but steroids, because you could get more jacked. And then in the 90s, it started to slowly become popular for women to get super jacked and fit. And then by now, it's like you can look on Instagram, there's entire channels dedicated to yoked, totally fit women
Yeah.
who I find attractive. But there are some guys out there who find that threatening.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think that everybody has different, tastes. And I think when it's excessive, I also don't think it looks that great.
Yes.
Excessive abuse of the body, you can tell. Like if
Yeah.
somebody's anorexically thin or super duper obese or super duper muscular, you can see that those things are excessive and probably not good for that person's health. And so to me, when I see that, it makes me think, oh, I like kind of,
It looks unhealthy.
oh, that
Yeah.
looks unhealthy. That's too muscular. Like they must be on steroids, right? But when somebody looks healthy and fit, even if they're heavier or lighter, or, that's attractive.
Yeah.
And but it can be attractive without being sexual. I think
Yes.
that's what I'm trying to get at, because that's your topic, is sexualization. And so I think women probably do it too, but probably to a lesser degree, like sexualize other women or men.
And
Yeah.
I also think that
Chippendales.
that
Yeah, but I mean, like, do they go like to the beach and go, I mean, like I could say, oh, that person looks good, but I'm not like thinking beyond that.
Creepy.
Creepy.
Yeah.
I'm not creeping out on them.
Yeah.
And it's that like thing where, well, like at least in the 80s and 90s, the male version of what man they want to be was the yoked super male guy, and the female was in a penthouse. And then the female version of what the ideal guy would be was the Vogue model, who was like a Ken doll, and the woman was a coat hanger. And so men were attracted to a different type of female than females were, and men envied a different type of men than females wanted to be with. It's like the classic, the woman's after the warrior, a poet in a nice suit who has proper hygiene, right? And thinks the ideal woman is a coat hanger. And that was kind of a thing for...
Though hygiene is extremely important.
Yes.
I think that those are generalizations.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, they're generalizations. It's a generalization.
Because I think that every person, I would argue that every person is kind of attracted to different things.
I would think so too. But wouldn't you say that, like a Penthouse magazine, the target audience is definitely a man?
I don't know. I don't even know what Penthouse magazine is.
Like
Sorry.
I say, like
I don't
every
know
man.
Yeah, I don't know either. I've never seen
Really?
it. I'm just kidding.
He reads the articles.
And
there's no articles in Penthouse, put it that way.
Oh, okay.
Like, I mean, I distinctly remember, especially in the 90s, back when magazines were everywhere in hospital.
Yeah, do magazines even
rooms.
exist anymore?
Right.
Not really.
What is that?
I don't think so.
Magazine?
Magazines, yeah.
Magazine? What?
Yeah.
And
MAGA? What?
MAGA. Only MAGA exists.
you could instantly tell what magazines were aimed at the male audience or the female audience.
Mm-hmm.
And what the ideal female was, and the ideas of what the advertiser saw that women want to be. And so I think a lot of times when like a man is admiring a man, they're admiring them for the qualities they wish they had.
Yeah.
And when a female is admiring another female, they're thinking, God, I wish I was that. Not an attractiveness for...
We're talking about heterosexual
Yes,
too, because
hetero, yeah.
obviously
That changes. Yeah.
obviously it changes if you're attracted or to the same sex.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A cool little creative endeavor would be the MAGA zine,
Oh my god.
where you could do a little zine. You know what a zine is?
What's a
I know
zine?
what zines are.
A zine's like a miniature, sort of somewhere between a comic book and a magazine.
It's a non-professionally published thing done
zine?
before smartphones, often in the punk rock and alt political world.
You could do a MAGA zine, and then you could like spell out the caricature of the MAGA movement in the zine.
We can't go near MAGA. That's too controversial of a topic.
All right. So my main question here is how much of sexualizing something like jiu-jitsu or a sport or whatever is natural and what people normally do and okay, and how much of it is soul sickening and repressive and bad for the human spirit and bad for society? I think those are the things that I'm thinking about when I think of a popular jiu-jitsu brand doing a Playboy collaboration. When I'm looking at the Instagram models in jiu-jitsu, I think you know, looking at Brazilian jiu-jitsu black belt women wearing bikinis and having their black belt wrapped around their waist while they're in a bikini, what are the implications of adding that? I mean, basically objectification of our female idols in our sport. What's the deal?
I personally think that it's particularly dangerous because of the nature of the sport and the tension that already may exist on many mat rooms and for many women and many podcast viewers and stuff that already don't want to hear martial arts advice from a woman, already don't think that women are qualified to, you know, teach jiu-jitsu or whatever, that it just adds another layer of stuff to overcome. And then not to mention that people are rubbing their bodies all over each other, and then they're envisioning that bikini picture. And it to me, it just makes the whole thing a little bit less safe for women to really grow and be thought of as on the same playing field and equal as men. Go ahead, Chris.
And like I say, I think there's a large element of our culture that doesn't want that, what female positive direction. They want to go back. And like like obviously, and I don't think any Brazilian guy I know would argue this. Brazil is a much more machismo, patriarchal honor culture, which is where this sport comes from. And I could see how, just from its roots, where women didn't do the jiu-jitsu 30 years ago. And like, I was recently just on an Australian podcast called The Gi Spot, which is like their logo. I think they pronounce
it as a G spot.
It's the G spot. It's like, but it's spelled Gi Spot, but they make the I really small, so it says G Spot. But it's kind of a play on words, both Gi and G. And it's a female empowering podcast run by 2 Australian female with jiu-jitsu people. But like off podcast, we were talking about how that could be seen from the male world as something totally different, right?
Like sexualization.
Right. And that's like kind of a thing. Like there's obviously a certain kind of guy that is going to see sex through anything. They're going to always...
Probably young too.
Yes.
Because they're... You know how young guys are.
There's no way they cannot, like, and I can relate, like, when you're a 15, 16-year-old guy, what is it, every 3 seconds? Like, that's your thought. That's our evolution. Yeah. And so and people often think because something is natural, it means it's good.
Mm-hmm. Like high fructose corn syrup?
Right.
It's not good for you, Chris. It's not.
Uranium is natural. Opium is natural. It doesn't necessarily make it good. Yeah. And male sex drive is natural. But does that mean it's good? And most anthropologists and historians believe that religion is in essence a way that culture controls breeding. Because we have to control breeding, or the elders want to control it, so young people without experience aren't doing things that disrupt the tribe.
Yeah, and I mean, it kind of seems like you repress sex enough, and then you get perversion to an extreme.
Yes.
And
like
you get
priests.
weird.
Oh, poor priests.
Yeah, like you get all kinds of weird stuff going on. So it's like, clearly there's an ability for sexualization of things like jiu-jitsu to turn into a repressive, awful component to a culture. But you can't just do away with it completely, right?
No,
So there's got to be some respectful and uplifting way to acknowledge that sex is part of what people do, but not objectify anybody, male or female.
It's like, I would say that, like, I'll say one little political thing. Part of what the far left's problem is trying to repress what is a natural drive for men to want to feed, fight, and fuck. And part of what the right's problem is to say, that's good, let's feed that more, right? There's a balance of that. And part of what's so attractive within what they call the manosphere on the internet is telling young men that it's okay to want to do that. As a matter of fact, we're going to encourage it. And you should objectify women. Women should be part of your property. Like, it leads down a whole rabbit hole. And then over on the left side, it's like, you're evil if you think that way. And even the thought, like, there's a balance in there.
But women should not be property. Let's just make that clear.
I agree.
There's no balance about that. That is a hardcore, sorry, no one should be property.
That's what some people on the far right end of the manosphere
I know that's what they think,
yeah.
but I'm just saying,
yeah.
because you said there's got to be a balance, but let's be clear. There's no balance on that point.
So men shouldn't be property of women.
No
either.
one should be property. Everybody should be free.
Now,
As
there
free
are-
as we can be.
And in
Except slaves to our kids, maybe.
Ah,
That's how I feel. I'm a slave to my kids.
that's for sure.
in a lot of pre-Abrahamic religious cultures, which introduced monotheism, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, pre those, there were a lot more matriarchal cultures, because biologically, you don't need too many men. What you need is women to
That's right.
So like there was a much stronger value for women in a positive way.
Let's bring it back.
When the monotheistics came in, that's what made women property, because of not the value of the men trying to control them. And I don't quite have my history right now because I'm not fresh on it, but
That's fine.
I would suggest anyone do a deep dive into, like, with the Persians, pre-Islam, wrote the first Bill of Rights of all human rights. And this is thousands of years back that they outlawed slavery. That there was all kinds of like things that now most people say, yeah, slavery's wrong. But then when monotheism came in, we went through a good 2,000 years where it's okay to be slaves again, to rape again, to be a dickhead again. So,
Yeah, slavery is interesting because it's definitely a thing where we go like, okay, that's a hard no. Like, it's definitely not okay to own another person.
in most of the world,
Yeah. So
there's a lot of parts that's still okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess there are part of the world
Yeah.
where people still believe in that.
Yes.
I guess like where I live and where my brain is that what's good is that is an absolute and 100% black and white. That is not okay. But the sexualization thing is kind of different because people have to do sex. That's part of.
Well, they don't have to.
If they want to
if
reproduce.
people want to keep going on
Right.
this earth,
Humans,
so we can't
humans
go.
need to.
We
yes.
can't. This is a thing where we can't go hard no.
As a
There is
population,
no,
Yeah.
like we can't go a hard no
They need to
against
reproduce.
sexualization. There has to be some gray
until we're
area.
creating humans in the laboratory, and we no longer need sexual reproduction, which is true for a lot of animals we breed. We no longer even let them have sex.
Yeah.
We're breeding them through laboratory experiments.
And then do we lose our
Humanity.
humanity if we go that route? So it seems like something that needs to be celebrated, but we need to be careful not to abuse it, right? And
I'm a big fan of empathy, of actually like not rejecting empathy, because thinking and feeling pain about others hurts.
Mhm.
That's why we often reject things when we know there's natural disasters or war. Our brain wants to shut them off because it's painful to realize that yesterday Russia bombed a church and a school. That is painful to know. So we shut it off. But I think that the only way we progress as humans is to feel it. And when we shut it off, we allow it to continue. But at the same time, there is a movement amongst a certain Christian sects that is trying to reject empathy, which is literally what Christ taught, is empathy. They're saying empathy outside of your family is bad because you are wasting it on people that want to hurt you or kill you. Why waste empathy on them? Like, there's a whole school of thought moving down, and God, we don't want to get this fucking political, but there is a wing of a Christianity that is literally rejecting empathy and the begats, which most people would say are the teachings of Christ. So
The begats.
interesting.
The beatitudes.
Beatitudes, yeah.
So the begats.
What do you feel
How
like
did I
you
get
see
begats?
this
The
often?
Beatitudes.
Wait,
where-
I can't hear. Sorry, what?
Do you feel, Do you feel like you see this often where people kind of like, they kind of like make it seem like they're saying, oh, let's empower these women by letting them wear lingerie in public, but it almost seems like a ploy to be more creepy towards women and more, you know what I mean?
There's
I
a
don't
lot
kind of
know.
the way
No
I
one's
look
ever
at.
told me to wear lingerie in public.
Well, I'm just thinking like, generally it sounds like the jiu-jitsu community looked at this Hyperfly Playboy collaboration as like sex sells, right? So let's
So
do
they were
this.
against it because they were like, you guys are just trying to sell.
I bet it was
instead of
completely
trying to help.
mixed.
A bunch of
Hyperfly,
stuff.
didn't they though like back some kind of like mental health stuff?
Yeah, I
and
think
do,
they're a
like,
good
lot of
company, and I think
good
it's actually a
stuff?
woman that runs the company, and I
But-
think it's like a good
I have
company that
no
does nice
idea.
stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know that much about them, but
I know nothing about that.
I just think this idea where you're like, clearly the focus of Playboy is to objectify women, right?
Is
And
it? I would say Hustler is, but again, that goes back to Playboy can also border on into erotica and empower women. So
What's the point? And what's the point of erotica? What is the point?
to celebrate love and the expression of what's those three Greek words of love? There's
Eros,
agape,
philia,
eros,
and
yeah,
agape.
of eros.
But hold on a second.
Yeah.
I just want to know. Okay, so Chris has Uncle Len. We've talked about Uncle Len before. Uncle Len passed
Yes.
away over a year ago, and he loved to carve women, nude women,
Erotica, which is what I
erotica.
call it.
Never nude men, but some phallic symbolism.
Yes.
Angels. Some of his erotica is spread eagle erotica.
Yes.
Wood carvings and a whole collection of 100 pieces of this. Now,
Hundreds
when
of
I think
pieces.
about it and knowing Uncle Len, I think it is extremely creepy. He doesn't feel that way about it, but to me, it's like Uncle Len had the creep vibe going on. I don't think he was dangerous. I just think inside his mind,
Yeah.
when you're talking to him as a female, maybe he's sexualizing you even though you don't really realize it because he's just like an old man.
I
But
think
then
he absolutely was.
he
Yeah.
also would like go to the shop to eat noodles, and he had crushes on the waitresses and
Yes.
stuff. Like,
Yes.
so anyways, thinking about that, and Chris labels that as erotica,
The
I
art is
think
erotica.
it can still be creepy.
Yes, I think so.
Even if it's just erotica and not porn, it still creeps me out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even though I was nice to him
Yeah.
and stuff, I just always thought, ooh. And it was grandma's best friend.
yeah,
I think even a really skilled photographer can shoot a female athlete, and in that photographer's head, they might be thinking really dirty thoughts, but they might still get erotic pictures or semi, or like I separate the art from the artist. Is
Yeah, we
my
had a
point.
guy around our community that did nude paintings and stuff and sculptures when I was growing up. And I think at one point he asked my mom to do it and then tried to kiss her.
Oh.
Yeah, it was like
Yeah,
a creeped
so
out
it-
situation.
And
I
I'm
was
an
too
artist, and
young. If I
I've
was older, I
done
would have probably
very
gotten in there.
erotica
and beat it
art
up.
before.
Yeah, Chris
Yeah.
likes to put a lot of women
Yeah.
in his art, and in poses that it is borderline erotica, but I don't look at that and it doesn't creep me out like Uncle Len's carvings.
Well, her legs are closed.
Her legs are closed. She's not naked. She's just in a pose with a belt wrapped around her. I mean, if I was actually doing that on Instagram, I would think that that wasn't appropriate, but it's a picture. It's like a drawing.
Yeah.
So it's like, I don't know, it's just different. I think there's different levels, and
Yes.
This seems like a safe expression of sexual ideas in
this,
jiu-jitsu to me. These
ceiling?
pictures, the ones,
My-
yeah, the ceiling, this general ceiling.
Well, that takes me to a place where it is like it was. So by the time I was born, Playboy was out, but my uncles and cousins had what's called pre-Playboy men's magazines. So it was the article, And the articles were these racy things of the 17-year-old boy and his first car and the girl next door. And
Fiction?
Yes.
Like a fictional story.
Yes.
Almost like women read romance novels.
Yes. And it would have a pinup girl from like a World War II B-52 bomber.
And she probably had a bathing suit on.
Wearing a bathing suit or a Catholic girl suit or like whatever it was.
A short skirt.
It was before nude pictures were allowed. And of course, there were court cases on whether they were allowed or not. The Supreme Court, Larry Flint versus like where Hustler magazine was always being sued, mostly by the religious right. And then he's the one who brought out that it's the religious right who was doing all the sick shit. We're just like, yeah, you could get deep into the history of how it became not only societally acceptable, but legal. And then we came to porn. And currently, the internet has to remove thousands of hours of porn a minute because it's the most uploaded thing. More than Nazi shit. And that's the second most uploaded thing, right? So Facebook, Twitter, have to not only deal with Russian bots and other things, but constantly AI having to take down porn. And sometimes people will post a picture of themselves and Facebook or whatever will mistake it for porn. Just like if you put something on YouTube that is a historical analysis of 1930s Germany, it could get banned or demonetized because AI thinks you're promoting Nazism. Yeah. And that's kind of the world we're in now.
Huh. Yeah, I wonder what the healthy look is. You know, what is the good way to portray women in our sport?
Is
Melissa?
it in the eye of the beholder or in the eye of society?
Yeah, I don't know.
What's healthy?
Do you remember when Kira Gracie became a black belt?
Yeah, I think so. I think she was actually competing at events where I was competing.
Yep.
And
when you were blue and
against,
purple, she was brown.
I
and
remember her competing against Sophia at probably black belt, so I was probably a brown or a black belt at the time.
That's right.
Because Sophia's only like a year ahead of me in belts.
Wasn't there quite a campaign that like had her in sexy clothes or lack of clothes with her black belt and all this stuff for a period of time?
Lecca Vieira was like, I remember realizing that even though she was like the first female black belt adult division matches, the champion, all that, there was a lot of objectification of it. When I saw, it was when Melissa was a purple belt, we were at one of the pans and the men's black belts were happening on like 3 mats. And on one mat, it was female purple belts. And I realized more eyes were watching them because the fights were better, more exciting than watching men's black belt. And right then I knew the next wave in this is going to be women and in MMA. And then within a year, it was Ronda Rousey. Like all of a sudden, women were the top billing because they had finally arrived. Because men were bored of watching boring men's black belt matches. And it was more entertaining watching open class female purple belt than men's black belt.
But I think Tobin's question is that because of some kind of sexualization?
No.
How much does that play into it?
No, my question is
Maybe
like,
a little.
it seemed like some of that was going on. I feel like I can remember seeing pictures or like an ad campaign with Kira Gracie, like wearing like just a sports bra and like her black belt around her neck, looking like sexy and stuff. And I'm like, is that really good for her? Is that good for the sport? Like, should she just have a gi on like everybody else?
Guys
You know,
go shirtless, so it's kind of like, you know, to me, men like to rip their shirts off, or you can't even wear a rash guard underneath your gi, can you? I'm not sure.
No, not anymore.
You know, so you have to like show your chiseled abs and stuff. So I don't see anything wrong with, you know, a woman in a sports bra. I just kind of think when they're in their bikini and they're pouring water over their head and their butt, like that's like taking it too far. It's kind of like the difference between looking at somebody and saying they're fit and they look good, or are they doing this for some kind of sexual attention? Because that's when the girl takes the hose and is going, like, to me, they're trying to get some kind of attention that's sexual. They know what they're doing, right? They're not doing that without knowing that they're trying to get men to watch them.
They're definitely aware.
They're trying to get attention.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's unhealthy attention, right?
Is it what?
Is
That's
it unhealthy?
I would say that's like an unhealthy motivation in my opinion. Maybe they obviously don't think it's unhealthy for them to do that, right? The woman who's doing that, or maybe the men who are liking that and following that and appreciating that the girls are doing that, that the girls, ladies, women, whatever they are doing that.
It's all in the culture war right now, boy.
But if you're just posing for a picture in a magazine article and you have your sports bra on, I don't see anything different than a man with a shirt off. Yeah, or even in a bikini.
I would
if
argue
you're
the
in your
same
bikini
thing.
and your guys are at the beach and whatever, and
or
you're doing what do you call it? Figure modeling. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. With standing on stage and flexing your muscles so that judges can decide which muscles look. I mean, I think that's cool. If that's something that somebody wants to do, I don't think I have the self-discipline to do that. And I think that it also looks a little bit torturous, especially with dieting and all.
Well, it's kind of one of those things like often the same crowd that thinks there's no problem for women to pose erotically or pornography has a problem with LGBTQ people doing that. And the same crowd that wants to give LGBTQ people all the rights to do everything is demonizing female pornography, right? So it's, I don't know. I mean, I think so much of it's in the eye of the beholder and in the eye of society, which is in continual conflict over these issues because we are monkeys with language and guns, and we are trying to control breeding. And that's what I think our primal instincts are doing. Like, as open-minded as I am about all sex issues, do I want my 18-year-old kid to go to an erotic nightclub? No. That seems like something, for my values, it seems like that's not good. But then at the same time, I'm advocating that you have the right to do that, right? It becomes... Watch on Netflix a documentary called The El Dorado Club, which is 1920s Berlin, which was about their nightclub scene, the rise of the Negro jazz music, how it was sexual. It's really interesting to see that this culture war that's happening right now has gone on before.
That is interesting.
It kind of reminded me of like freaking. You guys remember that?
Yes.
Freaking, dancing, freaking.
To me, that always seemed inappropriate. I mean, even when I'm young, I'm like, God, I'm pretty conservative.
But you don't know how to do it, so.
True. But yeah, I don't know how to do it, right?
If you knew how to do it, maybe you wouldn't knock it.
Too. Maybe
I
wouldn't
you just
knock
meet
it.
some guy at a club and then you're out there freaking with them.
That's weird.
It's pretty weird, but it's also like a young drunk thing.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you're young, you're drunk, you're freaking.
That was 90s, right?
Yeah. 90s, early aughts.
People are still freaking.
People are still freaking.
They're still freaking.
Freaking's not going anywhere.
Yeah,
no, it's not going anywhere.
Freaking. There's all kinds of weird twerking. Yeah, but there's even weirder
weird.
stuff that I'm seeing, like just weird stuff that people are doing at clubs and in scenes, and like it's probably just because I'm old. Like I have no interest in going out to a club and freaking half nude and doing weird things. But I guess I can appreciate that these young people are just in the exploratory phases of their life, and that exploratory phase is like necessary. But I think that to me, it just feels very young. Like that's very young. Hypersexualizing women is very young. Men are, like we talked about, as teenagers are very, very sexual. Women too, I think, are a lot more sexual when they're young. And then we grow up and we mature and we become parents and we're
Yeah.
like, God, we can't act like that because then what would our kids be acting like? I
Right.
mean, people who don't mature, then it's like,
And there are those types. Yep.
you know, that doesn't seem that healthy. But,
Yeah.
you know, but it just seems like a natural progression that we go through these phases. And from where I'm sitting now, yeah, I wouldn't want my kid out at clubs freaking, but they might end up doing that.
And I think that it's a mistake to assume that humans are rational,
Yeah.
whereas what we are rationalizing machines.
Yeah.
We can rationalize anything.
Sure.
And to reverse that thought process, the scientific method, which I'm a fan of, is something that takes continual practice, like learning the jiu-jitsu, to reduce athletics. Like to reduce our instincts is something that doesn't come naturally. It's something we have to learn.
Yeah. Well,
Otherwise, we'd just be freaking and owning
Yeah.
everything.
just freaking around.
It'd be Lord of the Flies.
It'd be Lord of the Flies with sex.
That's why they read that in 9th grade, Lord of
Yeah.
the Flies, because we got to know that we have to have some kind of
order.
order, which
Yeah.
is oftentimes against our natural instincts to eat high
Yeah.
fructose corn syrup
Yeah, I mean,
and
I
Lucky Charms.
Lucky
Well-
Charms is good for you.
It is freaking good for you.
mean, part of jiu-jitsu, the reason why it's good is it's a expression of a natural instinct to fight. Right?
Yes.
And
It's a healthy way.
gets it
Better
out.
than freaking.
better than maybe freaking's the way.
Maybe that's a healthy way
Just
too.
get it out.
There's no exchange of body fluids.
Yeah.
It's a healthy
safe.
version. Yeah.
Seems safe.
It
Yeah.
seems safe, kind of, because like here's the thing: you're freaking, you're drunk. Who knows what happens next?
I know. That's the
Right?
scary part.
That's the
And
scary
that's what
part.
we're talking about is
Yeah.
we're sexualizing jiu-jitsu and who knows what happens next.
Yeah.
Like
That's true. True.
does this guy seeing these ad campaigns hit on this woman and then stalk her and then think, whatever,
Yeah.
I
things-
know she likes me, bro.
Yeah.
Yeah,
took-
because they do that too. They start messaging
Right.
and stalking them online.
And it also
They don't do that to me anymore.
and it also feeds
Just
that
talk shit about me now.
it can feed
Harsh world.
that whole incel thing, right? I mean, to like young people who are like that old thing, like on the scale of 1 to 10, obviously most people are average, but most people think they're 8s or think they're 3s. It's this: either your ego thinks you're better than you are, or you think you're way worse.
I'm
Yeah.
a 10.
And
Like
I
a
think
4.5.
the way the internet works is it feeds off of people's insecurity, especially young people. And then young men are attracted to incelism and other violent things, and young women are beating themselves because they're not attractive enough and think they got to go do Botox and implants,
Yeah.
right? It's kind of,
They don't?
there's an unhealthy.
Let me just say, I think that clearly, like, there's nothing wrong with a jiu-jitsu lady in a sports bra, the same way that there's nothing wrong with a jiu-jitsu guy with his shirt off. But if the lens gets tilted slightly to the side of, let's make this sexual,
Like her
Then-
sports bra goes way down to her nipples.
yeah, there's sweat dripping down between her
And she's
boobs or
Posing
whatever,
in
and
a
like
promiscuous,
the black belts
provocative.
tucked into her undies or whatever. I don't really know. Something like that where it becomes objectification, and then we're using that to sell. I think that becomes repressive, and that becomes negative and bad for everybody, is what it seems like to me. So it seems like this thing where it can be okay, but there needs to be it's a fine line, right?
Well, then we got to get into the whole topic of greed and selling things, right?
Well, we certainly
sex
can
sells.
do that
Nope,
because we have
we got to
time.
wrap that
I
one
mean,
up.
not
No,
today.
not today. We're all out.
We have time in the future.
Yeah.
We didn't even get through half of our show, and we're out of time.
I didn't even see the show notes.
There weren't any,
Oh,
but I had it in
oh,
mind.
you had show notes?
Had it in mind.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well,
In my
guess
mind.
what?
Next
We
time.
can do this again.
We can. Yeah.
We can.
We can just keep doing it forever.
Yeah, forever and ever and
Every
ever.
week.
Amen.
Amen. All right. That's it for today.
Cool. Radical.
Pound, like, and subscribe.
Subscribe.
Show notes.
I think that's an interesting topic.
It is an interesting
It's
topic.
really interesting because
I did a really good job at it.
Well, we all have targets on our backs these days.